My name is Bryan Pawlak. I've also been with the company for about 8 years, senior applications engineer.
We're going to go through some discovering and understanding SOLIDWORKS dismiss messages. What they mean, how do you get them, and how do you fix them?
So the first question we have for you is, how many dismiss messages are there inside of SOLIDWORKS?
Good guess. But that's not right.
All right. And much to our surprise, it was 186. So what are dismiss messages, and where do we find them? They're warning messages, dialogues that have been turned off, and we don't get to see those messages anymore. All right, these are globally dismissed. So you're going to find them in the system options. All right. Last option, all the way down at the very bottom, messages, errors, and warning. And we can see the nice big large box here full of checked boxes. That is actually all 186 of them in there for you.
Now obviously there's a lot of message errors and warnings throughout the SOLIDWORKS system that you may run into. We're going to focus on kind of the 5 basic topics, or the main ones. The opening files, parts, assemblies, drawings, and saving files. And we kind of picked out some of the more popular ones that we run into or we see the most. So we're going to hit those. The first one, should be good?
Yeah. You kind of have it like right up on you. You have it. Let me get you. Do that.
Yeah, it's on. All right, so the first one is dismiss messages. I'm not going to show this one because Bryan has a pretty good example that goes through what this is, but typically when you get this is when you move a file or something like that. But what's the problem if you dismiss this message? Any idea? What could be if you do that? The assembly opening files could be suppressed and you won't get that option to find them. So I'm sure you've seen that before where you go to open a file and it comes in blank and you can't find it. And it usually asks you to go find it yourself. If you dismiss that message, you don't get that option. We'll show you a pretty good example of that one in a second. Another one a lot of times you may run into is import diagnostics on a part. What happens if you just dismiss this message? What's the big deal? Any ideas? Well, if you uncheck or you select import diagnostics to dismiss the message, you may not know that you have problems in your file if you don't run it. Now you can always run it later, but that's a different topic. If you have it set to run, where you really may see an issue is if you really bring in some complex geometry that has a lot of problems with the file, it'll just automatically run import diagnostics and you might be sitting a while. Let's look at a real quick example of that. So I'll open up this step file here. And typically when you bring in an imported file, this is what you get. This is where you get prompted for that message. Again, if you dismiss it, just to save a click here or there every few seconds, save you a couple seconds, it could cause you a lot of pain in the long run if you dismiss that and like I said, you have a complex file. So, by the way, whatever you select becomes the default. So if you tell it to yes or no this selection, it's going to be the default message going forward. This one you may have seen as well, a document that's already opened. Do you want to show the open document? What's the big deal if you dismiss this message, right? Other than it could cause you some serious problems. One, it doesn't keep the selected document open. It just keeps the current one visible. So really all it is confusion. You don't know exactly what document you're in. If we take a quick look at this, let me open up a file. You can see this one is opened in a file structure. If I go to open up the same document in a different file structure, same name, I get this warning message. If you dismiss this warning message, you may not know exactly what file you're in. So it's the same file name, but I don't know if I'm in the one that's current. If I go to open, it says I'm in the root directory. But if I do a file save as, it kind of shows me as the buried directory. So it can be confusing to what file you're opening. So the big lesson is don't duplicate your files. Don't have them in multiple locations so you don't run into that. And certainly don't dismiss the message if you run into that problem. And this one you may have seen if you installed 2015. It's a critical fix. SOLIDWORKS is telling us there's a problem with SP0 to upgrade. What if you don't do that? Well, you may have incorrect file dates. Number one, this is a good example of using a PDM system to help with that issue. But here, SOLIDWORKS actually gives you the option to turn it off, the dismiss message. But it's telling you here in a big fashion here to make sure you update to SP 1.0 because you don't want to have be working with incorrect file dates. You may be working on the wrong file. Even though you do have that option to dismiss it, they still show up in the dismiss message list, the critical fixes, so you can turn it back on. So it warns you. Now, Bryan's got some pretty good examples of case studies that we've actually had on the support line that goes through some of these examples of dismiss messages.
Okay, so these were some of the actual support cases that came through. This customer was getting multiple errors when he was opening up the files. And you get the traditional contact tech support. All right, you've all seen that message. We all love that dialogue. It doesn't tell us exactly what's going on. So what he's seeing is that several parts are grayed out and do not appear in the model. All right. But if he tries to open the individual files, they'll open. Everything's good there. All right. And he's seeing some notes about write-only access. And he mentions, you know, he's on an older version, would upgrading the files correct this issue. All right, so sounds like a good idea. Let's go ahead and get the files up to the current version. Make sure that's not part of the issue. All right, anytime you do that, and especially when you have problems with your data set, we want to make sure you use pack and go. Go ahead and archive a data set. That way, if we want to go back to that original data set and look at the issues, we can get back to it. All right, and again, just moving forward, there is no going backwards. All right, so we upgraded the files. That certainly wasn't the solution. All right, so we told them to go ahead and check under the system options, messages, errors, and warnings. All right, and see if you have anything listed in that dialog box. Now, most of our preference is to keep that box nice and clear, all right, because we like seeing the messages. Software is trying to tell you something's wrong. So if we take a look at his assembly here, all right, this is basically what he was getting. He's opening it up, and throughout the tree here, all right, lots of suppressed components. If you opened up the individual components, he was not able to, or he had no issue with them individually. So when you go into your system options, go down to messages, errors, and warnings. One in particular that we have in here is unable to locate the file. So we're not prompting to look for missing files. So if you put a check in that box, it will clear out that message. So the next time that you open the file, we should have that message. And I think it's because can't get down to the resolution's off. All right, so if I come back in, one little trick there was to go back up to the general, the very first one, and hit the enter key. That'll take you out if you ever can't get to the checkbox. All right, so one last time here. One last time over here. Now when I grab this assembly, open it up, all right, it's going to start prompting me to locate those files. All right, each and every one of the missing files. Second one we had here was customer received some step files which were imported into SOLIDWORKS and saved as native parts and assemblies. He can open the individual part files without an issue, but when he opens the assembly, none of the part files open up. Unsuppressing the parts just seemed to prompt an infinite loop. Prompts him to find the file, and it just keeps going in this loop. So he put the files out on the network on an engineering drive, and the other engineers were able to open the files without any problem. Okay, so you can open them up individually. Other engineers can open the files. Sounds like when all the files are together, they will not open, but if you separate them out, spread them out, they all seem to work. Okay. So how do we start this troubleshooting process? Well, customer mentioned that he's got Smart Team data management. All right, so we throw that over the fence and get that off our plate, throw that over to the inflow guys, and wipe our hands of it, right? They pushed it back, said all the files are on the desktop. They're not even in the PDM, so we take the PDM out of the picture. That's what you always want to do, is isolate. So we opened the file open, went down to the assembly and checked the reference. Right, click the reference button, verify we're pointing to the right location. All right. Everything looked good there, so we went back in there. We remapped it to the files. All right. That still didn't solve the problem. So then we went through and said, well, let's open all the part files. All right, that loads them all into the RAM, and then open the assembly file. Go through the SOLIDWORKS search order. All right, first place we look for a file is going to be the RAM. All right, no luck there. And once we've kind of started exhausting these upfront possibilities, we commonly will go in, let's wipe out the user registry. Take your settings back to the SOLIDWORKS default. Okay, so we can go into HKey current user software SOLIDWORKS and wipe that out, and you'll get a brand new clean registry. And when we did that and reopened the assembly, suddenly we got a message that popped up talking about an internal ID mismatch. Do you want to accept the file? Okay. So it was prompting us, or is trying to prompt us, that the files don't match. Do you want to accept this change? But it'll never show it to you. Close that down. Right.
You guys seen that before, right? Registry? Restore registry?
All right, so we're just going to load his registry back into our session here. And we want to grab our assembly file. All right, as soon as I open up that assembly file, it takes me right into the open dialog. Okay? So it wants to find the first component, and sorry, my angle's off a little bit here. I think that's the B side, or B insert, and that's certainly right there in this directory. If I go and tell it open, it just keeps repeating. All right. If I cancel this, it's just going to move to the next part in the list, and same issue, keeps reoccurring, keeps reoccurring. All right.
That looks like my work at the end of the day. It's 50.
So when we take a look in the system options here, message errors and warning. There's the one we found when we reset, the second one there, the internal ID. But as you notice, this guy's got a lot of other messages in there that could be affecting selections. So if I clear that out, open the file back up, right off the bat, now I'm getting the message. It says the internal IDs, the external names are the same, the internal IDs don't match. So we're going to go ahead and accept these. And lo and behold, it gets his assembly. So lots of confusion on the customer's part. Very frustrated when all of a sudden your assembly doesn't open.
On that message, why would you ever hit no? The only fix I've ever found is to hit yes, and it resolves itself.
You could be switching out the files. I mean, it depends on if you know that part's different. So each part file has an external ID, which is the name of the file, and then coded inside of it, there's an internal ID that gets written in the code. So you might have a block, and one block is actually a square cube, and one block's a circle. And when you tell it to yes or no, it's going to force that part in, and that may cause errors and whatnot. So
Sometimes people hit it just out of error. They just don't want to see it again, so they hit no and click the button, and then it's gone. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some different part file dismiss messages that may pop up. First one's pretty common. You see this a lot of times when you're creating a dimension. When this dimension pops up, a lot of people just dismiss it. What's the problem if you dismiss this message? Is there a problem if you dismiss this message? Well, depending on your point of view, but it automatically will just create it as a reference dimension. You don't get the option to change it. You may have seen it before. Pull up one real quick. Here we have a sketch. You guys probably know this. If you double click the sketch, it will actually take you into it. Another tool that's not used a lot, but it's pretty helpful, is something called fully defined sketch. If you right click, you can do a fully defined sketch, and it'll add your dimensions to a sketch to make it fully defined. I'll go ahead and over define it so you can see that message that pops up. Here's where you get that warning message. So again, it's on your discretion if you want to leave it or not, but just keep in mind whatever you select and then say don't show again becomes your default. I'll just leave it. Say leave it driving, hit OK, and just to point out down here, if you do have an overdefined sketch, there's a nice little tool, a sketch expert, that will go in and help you resolve any conflict you may have with sketches if they're overdefined. Another one that gets hit a lot, which is a no-no, is discard changes to the sketch. What would be the problem here? This one's pretty obvious. If you dismiss this message, those buttons are so close together, it's easy to just cancel. I don't need to show you, but I will just because it's so easy. If I go to cancel out of this sketch, I may want to hit accept, but it's so easy to hit cancel instead. If you don't get this warning message, that's your safeguard to stop it from closing. If you didn't have this on, it would just close your sketch and you'd lose an hour of work. At least that's what I tell my boss all the time. I accidentally hit that button. That's why I lost all that work. He doesn't seem to buy it either.
No, you don't.
He doesn't. So the next one that comes up a lot is the derived template. If you have derived parts or multi-body parts and you want to create a new part from it, you can quickly just create an insert to a save body or something like that. In this case, I'll pull in one that has multi-bodies. I want to save these out as a separate body here. Insert features, save bodies. Pick one of the bodies that I want to save out. You have a nice little option down at the bottom that allows you to override the default template. If that's checked, it's no problem. It'll run it and pull in the correct template. If that's unchecked and you go to save these, if you have a different unit setup here, that's where you'll get the dismiss message. So you get the option to pick which unit you want. And of course, it could cause confusion if you think you're in one unit and you're not. The other one, Brian's got a pretty good example to show you, but you've seen this a lot, is when you go to delete a feature. Obviously, the problems can come if you uncheck that box. You could get rid of features or unabsorbed features. You don't have that control to be able to select what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. So Brian's got some pretty good examples in the case study of some actual user issues that we've had with it.
Okay, the case study we got for this customer called in, trying to create, he has patterns that have multiple features, all right, pretty standard. And he goes and deletes one of the features, and he's losing the pattern as well. So he just wants to delete out one of the features, and he loses the pattern. All right, called in, he was actually pretty upset, pretty frustrated. This should not happen. Should be able to delete a feature and not lose all his work. Huge problem is they're trying to automate the process. Okay, so it was suggested, if we all remember back, 2014, they gave us the checkbox to control the child features. And we suggest that he takes a look and doesn't have that checked. It should leave the linear pattern and any downstream features. Right. So he came back and said the same thing's happening in the mirror feature. Trying to take out one feature, and we're losing the mirror. All right, let's take a look at what he was seeing here. Back up another folder here. Load this one. Okay, and just a little tip there, if you're trying to load in settings, all right, you don't need, it does not like when you have your SOLIDWORKS session open. Okay, so he's got a molded part here, lots of features. He's got them nicely folded up, organizing things a bit. There's all of our features in here. And since it's molded, maybe you make the decision come in here. You got a little chamfer, a little corner break. All right, maybe you want to get rid of that chamfer. And if I right click and delete that chamfer, suddenly your hours worth of work become very bad. A little panic sets in as we just wanted to take out the chamfer, but now we've lost a whole bunch of stuff in here. In fact, we lost the pattern, we lost the support ribs. Not a good day. All right. Do you want to delete the following feature? All right. So if I clear that message, we'll open this back up and jump down to the, I click on it there, it grabs it in the tree. I believe that's the one I want. Can't see. There we go. That guy right there. This time when I hit delete on my feature, I get my nice little confirmation box that pops up. All right. This is just confirming, reaffirming what's going to be deleted. All right. By default, it was checked to delete the child features, and these are all the downline features that were taken out. So once again, this is one of those scenarios where whatever option was selected when that message got dismissed becomes your default. So we take out that chamfer. It gives us a little warning. It's a reference error on a sketch, but that's an easy fix. We don't lose the rest of the geometry downstream.
All right, next category is assembly files. We're going to go through a couple examples of assemblies that error message or warning messages that pop up. One that you have, if you have any type of pattern like a mirror or some sort of linear pattern and you want to dissolve it, you'll get a mates or a warning message saying that the mates will be top level. Well, what's the problem if you dismiss that message? What could be the cause of that, or what could be the downfall of that? Well, obviously, if you do that, you could have problems with existing mates that are top level mates. If you select yes, if you hit no, then you have mates that are floating. Let's take a quick look at that. So I just want to mirror these components over. And then I want to look like I actually mated it and not mirrored the component, so I'll dissolve the subassembly or dissolve the mates. And here's where I get that nice little warning message where it tells me what's going to happen. Again, if I say no, it doesn't create any mates at all with these components. As you can see, there's no mate structure, and they're just kind of free to float, which could be misleading. They look like they're in place, but they're really not. This one, hopefully you haven't seen, but if you're editing a part, hopefully you get this warning, you haven't dismissed this message. So what would be the problem if you just dismiss this message and it doesn't give you this warning that the part's just free floating out in space? As you can imagine, if you add any in-context features to those parts that are free floating in space, if you go to mate it afterwards, that's really where you'll see the problem. So here, I've got this part that's free floating. If I go to edit this part, I get this nice little warning saying, hey, you may get undesirable results here. And typically what you want to do is the best practice is to mate your components in place first and then make any edits to them. Because if you edit them freeform and then go mate them in place, it may cause conflicts down the line, and they're harder to track down once you've already added those restraints to it. A couple of these we'll just breeze through for time purposes. A large design review. If you've ever opened up a really large assembly using large design review, it gives you a nice little warning that's saying the measurements may be approximate. Well, obviously the downfall is you won't get accurate measurements, but as SOLIDWORKS users, we're used to everything being accurate, and we want the exact numbers as engineers. In large design review, just warning, you may not get that, so just you've been forewarned. This is probably a good one, and they've enhanced this message over the years. It's gotten a lot better. Before, a couple years ago, I think, was Bryan, that you didn't even have this ability to fix this message. But if you have an assembly open and then you go to open up a part in that assembly, what would happen if you made a change but didn't want to save it? It would automatically update your assembly if you had it open, and you didn't really get an option to fix it. Well, the problem is, obviously, if you make a change and you dismiss this message, those changes may go back to the assembly even though the part's closed. Let's take a quick look at that. Again, they fixed this so that you have better options now than you did a couple years ago. Let's pull up this. So I've got this assembly open. I go to open up this little part in the assembly. I want to make a change to it. Maybe I'll add a hole to it. Marketing says, hey, we would need a hole in this part. So you take your time, you do all your work, cut the hole in it, and then marketing comes back and say, you know what, we don't need that hole. Customer changes mind. So you've done all this work, but I don't want to save it. I'm just going to close this file. Don't save it. No, don't save it. But here I get this warning message that pops up. Again, the default is whatever you select. It lets me, it's kind of even confusing message. It says keep changes in the assembly. Okay, I'll do that. Well, what happens is, even though the part was closed without saving, because SOLIDWORKS looks in RAM, it looks for this part that's in the assembly. And so how do you fix it? What would you do? You want to close the assembly, right, and reopen it. Well, what
But
happens
Phil,
if you
I've been working on it for hours and I haven't saved those changes.
Yeah, so you may have other changes that need to be saved, but you don't want to save that change. So there is a little trick you can do to get out of it. If you right-click on the part either in the feature tree or in the assembly, you can go and just reload that component back in, and it'll reload the last saved version of it. So you don't have to close and open the assembly, saving you some trouble. All right. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You're about to make changes following a read-only document. I think we all know the problems with that. You could overwrite someone's file that's there. And you know in SOLIDWORKS, there is no true read-only unless you have a PDM system. It's just a warning system, basically. You can overwrite files if it's a SOLIDWORKS read-only. If you want to truly have it read-only, you have to use Windows read-only or a PDM system, which is even better. And we're going to go into some drawing. Yeah. Just right-click on the component. It's in the menu structure. You just find it.
Or in the file open, when you click the open button, there's a little arrow next to it. You can actually trigger the read-only flag.
All right, we're going to take a look at a couple of drawing examples
Let's
as well.
just stay on the. Yeah. All right, the first one we have is manually adding text to a BOM. All right, do you want to break the link? All right. So links are all over the place inside of our files. Our tables have links back to our part file and data. So when you double click and you override a link, you're manually putting a value in that now is not going to update when the model changes. So if that's dismissed, some user could be in there adding a bunch of values, not realizing that he is taking out a whole bunch of the automatic links that we build into these tables. And that's the big danger. We always want everything to update, stay as much automated as we can. All right, this one's kind of interesting. Deleting a revision symbol on a drawing. Okay, so we have our revision title, revision table in the title block, and that may be identifying, calling out several changes on a drawing. So maybe 4, 5, 6 different locations or dimensions that have changed. And you go in, you click on one of the callouts to delete. This message might actually delete the entire callout in your revision table. So delete the whole thing when you think you're trying to delete just one symbol. Deleting a drawing view, much like deleting a feature. We took a look at that one. Drawing views can have their dependent views, detail views, section views. If we go in and not pay attention to what we're deleting, we can take out a parent view and lose several other views, which could be an immense amount of work and another bad day at the office. Manual editing, again, another manual editing the BOM table. Do you want to load the part? Back, I believe, Phil, 2012, I believe, was when they introduced loading drawings lightweight. So when you open a drawing file, they're loaded lightweight. It's a performance boost. And when you go in and click on the table trying to modify it, it's got to load that part data into the system. If you dismiss this message and it's not loading that data, your changes aren't going to take in the table. The flip side of that may be that you're loading a bunch of data on a very large drawing or a large assembly, and that's just going to bog down the RAM and have performance implications. Phil, what do you got for saving files?
Got a couple examples in saving files. You've probably seen this one before. The files being saved is referenced by another open document. There's no No problems if you dismiss that message, is there? Well, it might be. Saving the file will update the file references, and so you may update files that you don't necessarily want to update, and so you want to have that ability to see that and to be able to change that and pick the selection. Now, this has also been enhanced the past couple of years where you get the save as copy and continue option as well as the save as copy and open. This one also is pretty self-explanatory. Saving the file will convert to the latest version. Again, the problem if you dismiss that message is you could overwrite files if you need it to be backwards compatible or share files with someone else that has that current version and not the latest version. Then it could be a problem.
And 2015 has no backwards compatibility with 14.
Correct. Because of that, the following documents have been saved. If you go to save an assembly file or something like that, you may get this warning message that pops up. Again, if you don't, it could contain files that have a different version, and it'll update those versions to an older version to the current version. Take a quick, brief example of that. Let's take a look. So the file saved. Here it gives you and indicates these files are in an older version and they're going to be saved to the latest version. So you got to be careful of that. If you need to share that with someone else, you'll update those files on them. They may not be happy with you. And this one I think we've all seen at some point when you are editing a file like that, it does tell you to rebuild and save the document. Where you could see a problem with this is they're not rebuilt to the latest version or the latest update, and so if you do an e-drawing or something like that, it'll even warn you and tell you that it's not the latest file, it's not up to date. So you may have to go back and rebuild it to fix it.
That's correct. E-drawing saves out the tessellation data, so if your files are not up to date, you can see errors throughout your e-drawing files that you're sharing with customers.
And this one assembly contains unsaved virtual components. This one's pretty different, but when you're dealing with internal components like this, you have the ability to either save that file and leave it internal or save it out to make it external. So that's why we don't recommend dismissing that message, because it can cause problems if you have a PDM system, number one, or if you need to share that document by sending it to someone, it doesn't save that file out. I'll quickly show you that example.
Virtual components write a temporary file on the machine that it was created on, and that file does not get picked up by a PDM system or even pack and go. So when you send an assembly to a customer that has virtual components, they actually don't open correctly. But if you open it on the system where that was generated, it will find that temporary file that it wrote.
Right, so I just created this new part in this assembly. It comes, you can tell it's a virtual component because it has little brackets around it. But as soon as I go to save it, yeah, I'll save that. Here's where you get that message. And so you want to have the ability to save these out externally if you want to share that information with someone. So don't dismiss that message. All right, we got a pretty good case study for that one as well.
Okay, so the customer called in where the save as file was not working. Customer's running 2012. Again, it's another Smart Team customer, so data management is involved. Went to work on assembly, right-clicked, open a part. So he opened up the assembly, opened a part from the assembly, selected, tried to save the file, made some changes, saved the file, and nothing happens. No dialog boxes, nothing, just kind of sits there. So it calls in, says the only troubleshooting that they've done so far is taking it outside of of the data management tools. Brought the files to local desktop, issue still occurring. So first step that we suggested is trying the SOLIDWORKS safe modes. Inside the SOLIDWORKS RX tool, we do have a couple safe modes that you can try launching your system in. All right, it's right on the first tab of the SOLIDWORKS RX. Launches SOLIDWORKS in the software OpenGL mode, and the second option will bypass the tool's options settings. So this really gets at the graphics and is the hardware and the graphic card part of the issue. Trying to narrow it down. Customer reported back that this had no impact on our issue. Let's see. Should load that registry.
You know what the answer is for that one? The feature works message?
I'm sorry, I didn't read the full message. The FeatureWorks is not available.
No, it's when you start SOLIDWORks, the title is FeatureWorks, but it has to do if your PDM, if your toolbox.
Toolbox, yeah, the toolbox is not mapped to the correct location. Correct. And that comes up quite frequently. When people upgrade, don't get the right version. Actually, a lot of times when you don't clear out all your old SOLIDWORKS data folders and you get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 folders in there, and it's picking up the wrong one. So usually launch at SOLIDWORKS, go under Tools, Options, Whole Wizard Toolbox, just remap to the correct toolbox, and then the message will go away. Okay. Open up the assembly here. Oops, that was not the assembly. Assembly is at the bottom here. Okay. So as the customer said, he opened up the assembly. Said he had to work on a part, so goes and opens up the part. Make some changes to the part. Where did the top of my screen go? Right. File, save as. All right. Try from a different location. Each button, everything has a different line of code. All right, so we might try it from a different location. File, save as. Nothing happening. Go into our message errors and warnings. Take a look at his list here. Once again, several messages. But the one that really jumps out when we first glance at this one right here. There's our keyword. All right, save as. That's the issue he's having a problem with. Clear that out, save as, and basically what it was telling us is that file is already open. It's open in 2 locations. We got the part file open, and we got that file referenced in the assembly still. All right, and you can only have 1 file in the RAM. So it wants to know, what do you want to do with these changes? Do you want to update them and push them back? So lots of, again, here's the one we looked at before too, unable to locate files. He's probably going to run across several issues with opening a number of his assemblies. So we've taken a look at a number of these errors, and they've been around for a long time. We've probably all seen a majority of these. How has it gotten better? How is SOLIDWORKS making this better?
So here we've got some new function. This is similar to the one that Bryan showed in the case study there. Where now, even if you dismiss the message, you now have this nice little warning symbol over each item. So you can hover over the part and it'll tell you the problem with it. So even if you dismiss the message, you'll still get the warning that it's there. And
so
what the problem is.
So earlier versions, you did not get any kind of symbols in the tree. You did not get any messages in the tree. Now when that's dismissed, it still shows up, still telling us.
It could save that customer some serious time troubleshooting that.
They've enhanced our dialog boxes. 2000, we decided that's 2012 or 13 and earlier. When you went and opened up a large assembly and you were missing a bunch of the files, right? And we get prompted, it says, do you want to find the missing file? And so you find it, or you say no, suppress that file. Well, what happened? Well, it came up for the next part, and the next part, and the next part. And this was exactly why we kept running into the issue, because people would say, don't show me this again, and boom, done. So now in 2015, we have a third option that allows us to suppress all the missing files and dismiss these messages without actually dismissing this message, so the next assembly we work on, we're still going to get that message.
Yeah, it seemed like for years they didn't upgrade any of these messages, but now they're starting to see that it does have an effect on the customer, so they are starting to improve them. Another improvement is they've added the ability when you're opening an assembly file that has a timer on the dismiss message now. So you get if you'll see it down at the bottom screenshot here, it has a little timer display before it kicks off into actually opening up the file. So it gives you a warning essentially.
A second part of this enhancement is the report. So after you open a large assembly, the timer, so you open your assembly, you know it's going to take some time to open up. We go grab coffee, we go to lunch. The beautiful thing about the timer is it's not going to sit there and wait for you to click a button. It's just going to dismiss it and move on to the next file. So it'll give us a report, tell you how many messages were automatically dismissed and how many files were suppressed. And if you click the report button, we get another dialog box there, which will tell you each and every one of the files and why they were suppressed.
Another great one that they've added, and we've been asking for this one for a while, is they have it for, you can dismiss the message just for this session. So for instance, like the example you see here with mates that are reversed, you're dealing with a lot of problems in this assembly. You don't want to necessarily destroy that message or close it for good, but in this session you don't need to see it anymore. So now they've added that flexibility to some, not all, but some of the commands, so which is a huge help.
All right, so dismiss messages, when you click Don't Show Me, those are globally dismissed messages. If you close them and close your SOLIDWORKS, come back in, they're going to be dismissed. They're not going to come back the next time you open up SOLIDWORKS. So we've been harping, I know I have, for a long time to get it where these messages are just for this current session, and they're listening.
Any questions about anything that you've seen or we didn't show you? Any questions about anything with the dismissed messages?
I guess there's an admin, is there some way for me to determine what my users are dismissing?
I wonder if that shows up in the CAD admin. I think the CAD admin dashboard would be your best place you can because it pulls in all the system settings, and that would be the best place to. You can't. Yeah, you'd be aware of it. You can't push changes out to the customer. You could set up a reg and send it to them, but you would be able to monitor. Sure, absolutely.
And in my
that by launching their SOLIDWORks icon is leading to a batch file and pull the reg file, could be able to reset all dismissed messages that are important.
Right, it is in the reg. You can, it's in the HKey current, under the HKey current user. You can do a find for, ask again, you can type that in, find it, and list them all out. But that is the, yeah, we found them all in there.
And the big thing, find all the ones that matter and try to reset them.
Now there are a couple that do make sense to dismiss when your toolbox is inside of PDM. Well, if you're an everyday PDM user, you know that. You know, so there are a few that we know about. You're just going to dismiss them, and we want to get rid of those. But that's fine. But a lot of these the messages are trying to prompt you that something's going on, and that's why our preference is to have those messages pop up. We get call after call, and these were just some of the better case studies, support call case studies that we had come through. But we get calls all the time, and it's amazing how many of them are related to dismiss messages. Finding and going in, clearing out that box.
Thank you, guys. There's, if you have your app, downloaded the app, there's a survey button on that app for the SOLIDWORKS World app. If you want, you can pick this class and take that survey. So they like to get that information, that feedback. So if you could, take the time to do that.
And these are just the list of all the many CATI presentations that we have going on the rest of the week. So we've all put a lot of effort and a lot of time into these presentations, so hope you guys check some of those out. And once again, thank you for taking time today and coming by.